Working on the Trans Am motor today. We're going to work on getting the harmonic damper back on this engine. If you recall, this original guy was a real loose fit. Definitely wasn't a press fit at all. But other than that, it looks workable. Has a repair sleeve on it that the seal is riding on. This was not an original damper. The 3 on there says it was produced in 1973. I somehow talked myself into getting one of these fluid dampers made in the USA. This is a silicone gel filled damper. And the first thing I noticed is it's super heavy. That's versus the elastomer band type damper that's standard on most cars. Do a little weight comparison here. Got 7.8 versus 10.4. Originally bought a cheap damper to replace this, was like 40 bucks, but then they were out of stock, it didn't come, and then I was gonna get a PRW overseas made silicone damper, and then I had shipping issues with that. I got irritated and just bought a USA made damper from Summit. If I ever rebuild this engine, I can just move this damper to the next engine. Inside here is a ring that's floating around in this silicone fluid. One issue is the center to center bolt holes are different. This damper is not going to accept the stock pulleys as they are. Here are the stock crank pulleys. They have part numbers on them, except for that one. I was able to find these 2 on eBay. I'll have to drill them in a minute before I paint them. And it's supposed to be a 0 balance. Looking at this original damper, there's no balance to it. Small drill hole to make it a 0 balance. This one also has a small drill hole. It's opposite of the keyway. But they said 0 balance. It's my understanding these Pontiacs are 0 balance at the front, and there's a slight imbalance at the back of the crank. And they made up for that by drilling a couple holes in the flex plate. So before I do anything, I'm going to see if this is going to be a press fit. Here they're saying they're looking for a press fit of 0.5 thousandths to 1.5 thousandths. Pull a reed off this crank here. Looks like there's a machined lip in there. Try to take a reading here. I'm coming up with 0.5 thousandths press fit. I have a harmonic balancer installer. You don't want to beat one of these on because you would be punishing the thrust bearings on the crank. Before I can press this on, I'm going to have to drill out these pulleys. I have a centering pin punch set. The bolt holes are through holes. So when I put this pulley on there, I'm going to rotate it 45 degrees. And we'll get a nice punch mark from that punch. You'll notice that this damper has a centering hub. I was thinking about using the TCI Rattler, but that one doesn't come with a centering hub. So I called the guys and I said, how am I supposed to get my pulleys to run concentric on there? And they said they didn't know. So I don't know if this bolt pattern is for a little bit older Pontiac, but I was talking to the guy at Fluidampr and he said they brought these holes out any farther, they'd be into the silicone cavity. So that's why we're forced to drill out a extra set of pulleys. So these pulleys fit in the centering hub pretty good. And I mark where the hole positions are. So we're going to have to rotate about 45 and punch them like that. I think this pulley is, either way, I wanted to have it with the numbers out. Wait a minute. Is it on the radius edge there? Almost looks like it, doesn't it? Yeah, it's up off of there like that. What the f***?
But I guess this pulley, that goes over that, and that big washer thing, doesn't it? Yeah, that should be sitting flat against there, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Just sit flat on there?
Otherwise it's going to be sucking this all in.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Totally sits flat. Either way, huh?
Yeah. Looks like we got a situation here. My air conditioning pulley is an add-on pulley. It fits nice and flat on this original balancer. But it's lifted off like 1/8 of an inch here. This balancer isn't built with a step like this one. I'm about to talk to Fluidampr and see what their solution is for this. That would find a bigger diameter pulley to run on there. So the ad said I can put on my stock pulleys, I just have to re-drill the bolt circle to match this new bolt circle. Apparently this is a cavity filled with silicone. And when I went to fit the add-on AC pulley on here, it wouldn't lay flat either direction. The original has a step in it. So the step is clearancing the add-on AC pulley. So I called Fluidampr about this. They said they didn't know anything. And doing some research in Summit, I saw that March actually makes a 3-groove pulley for Pontiac for this damper. Here's the March pulley. And both of these dampers get sucked onto the snout of that crank up to the timing chain gear. And if you study the groove positioning, you'll see that it's way off. So you can see that the original type pulleys line up pretty good with the water pump pulley. And there are different depth water pumps, and I checked mine and it's the correct one for that damper. Here's the March pulley, and you can see they have 3 grooves, and the groove that would line up for the AC is the same diameter as the rest of the pulley. And these original Pontiacs, it's stepped way down. I decided to have the local machine shop make me a pulley to match up with what was originally there. They were actually able to step down the groove that's going to go to the AC compressor, and they got everything lined up pretty nice. Hopefully this lines up with everything else in the car. In the end, this pulley costs almost as much as this balancer, and I think if I were to do it all over again, I probably would go with an ATI just because of the sheer cost of this setup. I talked to a reputable machine shop during my research, and they said they don't use silicone-filled dampers on their engines. And I asked them why, and they said they tried the China brand, and they were actually breaking crankshafts. So this is a USA-made damper. Hopefully we don't have that issue. I really don't think we will. I have a couple friends that are running this damper with no issues. And according to Fluidampr, it's supposed to increase performance of the engine.
I would think that even if it doesn't even make you 1 more horsepower, if it can just stop the harmonics in the metal, if you have an engine that's out of balance and you keep it at that frequency, it's like when you shut your grinder off and it goes bang, you can destroy an engine. And if you have an engine that's staying up at high RPM for a real long time, you know, the metal fatigue will end up making it crack. So he was thinking that this Fluidampr would be a better performance than just a rubber ring on a hub that would kind of flex a little and take out these harmonics. It sounded great in the advertisement, and hopefully this will work out better. So what is nicer about this situation, stock, they're trying to take out the frequency that happens where you drive it. Let's say if it was designed to wind out at 5,500 RPM, they're going to cancel out those harmonics at about that RPM. And it's just a fixed unit, okay? And with this rubber and this stuff moving around, this actually builds up heat in this rubber, and this rubber deteriorates. This thing has a steel hub, steel outer side, and then there's a ring in here with silicone that's supposed to dampen the harmonics throughout the whole RPM range. And anytime you can save your engine from the harmonics, I would think that it would make your crankshaft last a lot longer, and you wouldn't have to worry about sending parts out the oil pan. And it's SFI approved. It's got graduated timing marks. You got 90 degrees, 180. When you get used to doing valve adjustments, if you've got a car that's got solid lifters, you should only have to rotate it to top dead center, do the certain amount of valves that, you know, 2 cylinders are exactly the same, and the other ones have exhaust or intakes that are open. Then you should only have to go 180 degrees And you can adjust all the other ones. It's a lot quicker than just doing one cylinder at a time. A lot of guys like doing it that way because they make sure that each cylinder is done. But when you have a degreed harmonic balancer, it just takes a lot of guesswork out of stuff. I was at a place one time, my buddy was a carpenter and I'm helping him, and we were at a speed shop, and I see this guy taking a mallet, banging this thing on. And even at age 16, I knew that you were supposed to have a threaded installer with a washer, or some guys have a bearing in theirs and they just draw it on. You don't want to be banging this thing on, especially when it's connected with rubber. I think that's the most ridiculous thing you could ever do. And I've known two people that have had these things let go. My brother and another friend of mine that had a 73, they called it a GTO, but they weren't, they're a bigger car and stuff. But he had the 400 in there, and when he was at Union Grove and it had a 4-speed, and he was topped out in 4th gear, all of a sudden this all let go, and it ripped all kinds of stuff. The radiator got ruined, the blade went through the hood. I mean, you don't want to forget about this piece. It's very detrimental if it goes bad. My brother just had everything go out the hood. It didn't wreck anything else. But it could go all over. If it hit your tire or whatever at a high speed, you'd have a flat, you'd be spinning out. So don't take this lightly. They're important.
Following the instructions, we're going to put some lubricant on the ID of this damper and on the crankshaft snout to prevent galling. What size wrench do you think that is?
Adjustable.
I got it. We're just gonna get a little tug and see if we did get a press on there.
It doesn't want to come off, no. In fact, somebody made a comment on that when we were taking it apart, and I went on a video that we were taking the thing apart, and the guy goes, that balancer came off a little loose, didn't it? This seems a lot safer.
I mean, you gotta have somewhat of a press fit for it to work properly.
That's a lot of torque.
That's pulley the machine shop made for me. They had to not go to the full V depth for the AC pulley, because if you look in the step in the backside, they would have blown through. Not sure which belt it is, but it seems like it lays in there good enough. It'll get the job done. We'll see. This no-cog belt seems to have a little bit better depth to it.
So you see this stuff called shark hide, and it just puts a sealant coat on it, and then it doesn't get all oxidized and crusty looking. And then it'll stay shiny looking.
Probably eventually paint it black if it works out, but for now, we'll keep it shiny. Because of the close bolt circle on that new balancer, I actually had to machine down the edge of all the washers. So they clearanced the balancer.
Smaller diameter.
You can see the difference in the bolt circle here. And these are actually different bolts that I'm going to have to use. But I'm not sure what kind of tap they use, but this bolt's a little sloppy in there. And read on the forums, having these bolts back out can be an issue. So we're going to install it with a little bit of Loctite.
So we got Loctite on all the threads. Yeah, it's so tight you can't even get a fingernail in between the hub and that washer.